First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about AAUW, the American Association of University Women. We had the easy part of tonight's thing is organizing the room, getting some publicity out, doing some things like that. It's a nationwide organization founded in 1881 with nationwide chapters. And locally, we raise money for scholarships, and we give scholarships at the high school level for reentry women and a couple of STEM scholarships for 8th graders. And so if you see somebody selling grapefruit or peddling something for AAUW, that's where your money goes. And again, thank you for being here, and thanks to the League of Women Voters. They carry the lion's share of the work about this forum, and they're very good at it. And I'm happy to introduce the main moderator tonight, Ed Cabrera.
On behalf of all the volunteers representing the League of Women Voters of San Luis Obispo County, we welcome you to tonight's forum for candidates seeking a seat on the school board of the Paso Robles Joint Unified School District. We thank the candidates, first of all, for stepping forward to represent their community and for joining us tonight. We also thank those in the audience for taking the steps to become engaged and educated voters. The League of Women Voters has always had the reputation for being nonpartisan. We neither support nor oppose any candidate in any election. The League recognizes the trust that you have placed in us to organize and moderate a candidate forum without bias. Therefore, we shall carefully manage the time limits on the candidates' responses. Our aim is to give our audience as much time as possible to hear full responses to their questions. We remind you that a candidate forum is not a campaign rally. It is an informational forum to be conducted with civility and decorum. This is our third trip, thanks to the AAUW, to come and help facilitate a forum. And we once invited the students of Paso Robles High School to come and experience the forum because we knew ahead of time that it would be the type of civil discourse that they would want to practice in high school. And I must tell you, the audience was superb that night. And I expect the same tonight. Helping us with this important task of managing our limited time is our volunteer timekeeper, Ann Quinn in the front row. She's seated so that the candidates and I may easily see her. She will raise her paddles to tell them when they have 1 minute left on this time. 30 seconds on their time. And finally, when they must stop because their time has expired. We ask that the audience realize that any reaction to a candidate's remarks, even polite applause, and last time it was this, I had never seen this before, but I learned stuff, may be disruptive and may distract them from using their time effectively. So please refrain from any interruption. These limits on the behavior of the candidates and the audience were amongst the rules set forth in an agreement all participants signed before the forum. In addition to the limit on audience reactions, the candidates agreed to refrain from wearing any campaign attire and to discourage their supporters from doing so as well. The intent of these rules is to ensure the decorum and neutrality of the forum so that attendees can focus on the issues. When you came in tonight, you were encountered by 4 league members assisting us as greeters and runners. They are Lee Livick, Liz Helgerson, and Christine Parker. They gave you 3x5 cards for you to provide questions for the candidates. And they instructed you to only write 1 question per card. Now the caveat is that if a question is repeated, obviously we're only going to ask it once. And that question should pertain something that is in the purveyance of the candidates. In other words, we will not ask them the question of how you would stop the Middle East Conflict. The question cards will then go to our sorters, Jean Slater, Lorene Cabrera, and Peg Furking. They'll choose the questions that best address the topics, again, without repetition. The more concise, legible, and topical, the questions shall be considered for selection. We keep the cards afterwards as they become the property of the League of Women Voters. We are sorry in advance with 8 candidates tonight if we don't get to all your questions. The candidates will be responding in the order in which they are seated. Opening statements will be limited to 1 1/2 minutes. Answers to the following series of questions, your questions, will be limited to 1 minute. Closing statements will be in reverse order of the opening statements. So Mr. Enney will be the first person to give his closing statements, and we will finish with Mr. Williams. So, the candidates for City Council are in alphabetical order.
School board.
A school board, sorry. Too many forums. Hunter Brees, Leo Castillo, Tracy Dodderman, Kenneth Enney, Tim Gearhart, Adelito Haichu, Lorene McCoy, and Nathan Williams. Again, welcome all. Let us begin with the 1 1/2 minute opening statement from the candidates. Mr. Williams.
Good evening. I'd like to start by saying thank you for having each of us. I know we're all thrilled to be here, and it's a privilege. So again, Nathan Williams. My brief introduction is going to be, I'm a proud husband and father of 4 kids, Paso Robles native. I grew up here. I'm actually currently raising our 4 kids in the home that I spent most of my formative years in. Paso Robles High School graduate. I've been a trustee for the last 4 years and board president for the last 2. Very humbled and very proud to have done so. Deeply involved in the community, everything from my kids' classrooms to different organizations, volunteering, being a part of, just being able to be out in the community, hear voices, get involved and talk to a lot of people. Excited to be here and look forward to answering the questions that come our way.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Hunter Brees. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I really appreciate everybody just showing up for all your different candidates, whoever it might be. A little bit of my background. I'm a recent graduate from Paso Robles High School. I, too, am a Bearcat, a little bit more recent than my opponent. I graduated in 2022, so I'm just 2 years out of the high school. My campaign and my candidacy, I'm really bringing a new perspective to the school district. Being a recent graduate, I think that I can show best the perspective of the students and the teachers' needs, being that I was there so recently. And there's a lot of work to be done, in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of other candidates up here can say the same thing. But there's a lot to be done at the Paso Robles district, and I think that I can bring a new perspective to that, to being on the board, only being 19 and only being out of the high school for 2 years. So, Hunter Brees, thank you.
Mrs. McCoy.
Hello, my name is Lauren McCoy, and I am running for Area 5. I actually am rerunning. I'm already in my second year term here at Paso Robles School Board. And the reason why I'm running is because I just feel strongly that as a parent of 2 elementary students, that parental rights and parental voices need to be heard, and parental involvement is super important. And so what better way than to run for school board and have a say in the things that we're teaching our children. And so I'm just really just standing on the platform of getting parents involved in what's going on with their students in our school district and making sure that they're advocating for their children and that their voices are being heard. Thank you.
Mr. Gearhart.
Good evening, and glad to see you. A lot of people I know. Good to see you there. I am Tim Gearhart. I am a retired teacher of 36 years. Also, I was elected 3 times by the community to serve on the school board. And my most concerns go around the safety of the kids that we entrust to the schools. Some people don't realize that the district also has responsibility for the safety of those kids as soon as they leave their home and get to school, and leaving school and going home. And right now, my neighborhood is battling to get a crosswalk on, thank you. Thank you for the cross area between Niblick and Rosemary. Right now with Almond Acres, our traffic in that area is pretty overwhelming. And
Thank you,
that's
Mr.
it.
Gerhardt. Mr. Castillo.
Thank you. I've not lived here for 25 years. I've lived here for 12. My military career took me all over the globe, but Paso Robles has always felt like home. I have served this community specifically in regards to youth support. I've supported the youth in the arts, drug prevention, behavior, and wellness. I'm a parent of a Bearcat. I feel that the community has given me everything that my family didn't necessarily deserve right away, but they were welcomed and embraced very much so. That specific reason is the reason I'm running for District 6. I feel pretty passionate about supporting the youth, supporting our community here, and I'd like to give back to the community that did so much for us. Thank you.
Mrs. Haichu.
Hi, my name is Adelita Haichu, and I graduated from Paso Robles High School in 1999. I moved here when I was 15 and pretty early on decided that this was where I was going to raise my family. I'm a married mother of 3 children. 2 are currently enrolled in the high school, and I have a first grader at Virginia Peterson, where I'm the current PTA president. The entirety of my children's academic time, I've been a volunteer. At some point, I volunteered at Pat Butler so much that I ended up working there. It was kind of a joke that I was there so much, I might as well get paid for my time. And I served for 3 years as a paraeducator in kindergarten, and I have a long history of dedication and commitment to the students of Paso Robles. And I'm just looking for the next avenue to continue that service to the students and the families and to our community at large. Thank you.
Mrs. Dodderman.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tracy Dodderman, and I am the mother of 2 students that attend Winifred Pfeiffer. I have a 2nd grader and a 5th grader, and we love our school. It's been really fun being involved. I'm the PTA president there. I'm on the school site council there. I have a background in business that includes management, consulting, sales, hospitality. I recently obtained my MBA, and with my involvement over the last couple of years in the schools, I wanted to do a little bit more, and I felt like this was the perfect way to do that. If elected, my priorities would be academics, communication, improving the learning environment for the students, fiscal responsibility, increasing parental engagement, and if possible, adding more transportation. Thank you.
Mr. Rennie.
Good evening. My name's Kenny Ennie. I've lived in the area since 2012. I've been a landowner here since the late 90s. I got involved in education during the pandemic when the schools were shut down, and my godson wound up committing suicide. And that was kind of my Jonah moment to get involved and try to fix what I think is a failing system. The district's at a crossroads right now. We've got some good leadership that's come in to take charge in the form of Mrs. Loftus. She's got a lot of things that she's got to fix. When I look at the role of the board, I always have to remind not only board members, but the community that our job is direction and oversight. That direction comes in the form of a plan, and the oversight comes in the form of establishing objectives and tracking those objectives. When you look at what we're facing right now, we've got a $4.9 million deficit for this fiscal year. The class of 2025 is projected to only have a proficiency rate of 15% in math and 45% proficiency in English. What you need right now are proven leaders that are going to fix the system and speak truth to power, and that's what I do.
Thank you. Some important housekeeping details. The all-important decision or information that you need is through that door to your right are the bathrooms. Also, at this point, you should make double sure that you're, for consideration of the people in the audience and also the candidates, to make sure that your phone is off. Also, a note to the candidates, after a person is finished answering a question, the successive person should take a beat and a half to allow the timer to reset her device. First question. What is the role of a school board member and what is not on their scope? Mr. Brees, you are first.
I think Mr. Ennie just highlighted those topics for us. The role of the board is oversight and direction, and that's what the board needs to do. The board needs to give oversight to the district staff, let them know what they're doing right and help them in succeeding in what they're doing right, and also let them know what they're doing wrong and help them fix what they're doing wrong, and hopefully make things better ultimately for the students. We oversee different curriculum that comes in, budget items. So really the board just needs to make sure that they're taking initiative and overseeing what they need to do and give district staff the correct advice on what to do and make sure they're running the district efficiently and well.
Mrs. McCoy, again, the role of a school member.
I second what Hunter said, but I will also add that not only just overseeing and helping implement things, but as well as the follow-up and making sure that it's done consistently and that it reflects what the board as a whole is trying to represent and move forward with.
Mr. Gerhardt, what should and should not be the role of the school board?
Board members are not judges of teachers or whatnot. We have one employee, and that's the superintendent. We're not supposed to be going in and telling people what to do and how to do it, even though one would like to at times. Also, the board should be open for communications between the population, especially the teachers, and the parents. The parents are critical. So it's something that we do and review every single program and activity that comes before us and see what we think about it.
Mr. Castillo.
I'm not necessarily piggyback of what Mr. Ennie said, but I agree as far as direction, guidance, oversight. I also agree with the idea of supporting the district, the staff, the teachers, the paraeducators, the bus drivers. I also feel that understanding and knowing the population, understanding and knowing what's going on at each site, every specific school, since we have different cultures, different socioeconomic backgrounds at every school site, it's not the same across the board. So understanding what our culture is in every single school site is important to me. I feel that that's something that we can learn as far as building relationships with that school. Thank you.
Mrs. Haichu.
I agree with everyone's answer because it's kind of like a straightforward question. I just want to add that I think when you're considering a school board member, you want someone who has experience considering someone who's a parent and has that kind of home experience of what that feels like for decisions to be made about our children, someone who has classroom experience and can see what the decisions that the board make look like when they're implemented in the school, and someone who's given their personal time to volunteer and see how those decisions play out throughout the entirety of the system is a really important thing to consider when you're looking in a school board for a school board member.
Thank you. Mrs. Dotterman.
I think that the role of a school board member is to provide oversight, as everyone else has said before me, but also to set expectations and to hold the superintendent accountable for achieving those expectations. It's important for the school board members also to advocate on behalf of the students and their families, and to be focused on the things that are within the purview of the school board. I think it's really important for the goals to be set early on and agreed upon by all of the school, by everybody who's on the board, and then milestones measured and communicated well to the community as far as how they feel that the district is doing. Thank you.
Mr. Inney.
Well, the direction part's the easy part, setting the plan, establishing the goals. It's really the oversight that's the hard part, and that's going to require a board member that's willing to get out and go look at schools, talk to both sides. Case in point was the contentious closure of the school of the 36th Street campus. That campus could have been salvaged. I think there was 8 years of neglect because of misrepresentation by reports. So that being said, the board members have to do more than just go along to get along with whatever the staff tells them. They have to go out and verify what is going on at those campuses. When you looked at 8 years worth of facility inspection tool reports that all had the same discrepancies, but the school accountability report cards were all green. That tells me that the board never got up to go and look at the state of that campus. And that's the primary job and oversight, getting up and going and seeing what's going on and talking to people.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, the school board, a trustee's role is to be a voice for our constituents, putting our kids first and being, with the goal of the greater good in mind. With that being said, it is oversight, it is direction, but it's not in the weeds of trying to make specific goals or specific direction as far as exactly how staff is going to manage it. We need to trust our staff to be able to do their job and to do it right and do it well. Things the board is not tasked with is trying to change state legislation. There are other things that we are not to, extend beyond our purview. But our board we are tasked with understanding the roles, understanding the limits of our purview, as well as what we need to do and to be involved with every level of the school district.
Mrs. McCoy, you'll be the first to answer the next question. What are your 2 top priorities, and what specific steps will you take to accomplish them?
Well, as mentioned before, my number 1 priority is making sure that parents are involved in their child's education. How I've gone about that is participating in the PTA meetings at the 2 sites that I'm involved in, but not just stopping it at that, but having communications with different parents in our community, making myself available to them, and showing up and volunteering at schools that my kids don't even go to, just so that I can see how things are taking place. The second thing is safety. That's super important as a mom to 2 children that go to Georgia Brown, making sure that, as Mr. Inney mentioned, that things are being taken care of, and listening to the parents when they have complaints, and making sure that I do my due diligence by reporting those things and following up with those, and making sure that we are creating a safe space for our children to learn and grow.
Thank you. Mr. Gerhardt.
Thank you. Okay, first, again, safety. That's my primary one. There's a lot to do besides making sure that there are different programs going on, like the safety programs, earthquake, fire, all these different things need to be done, and sometimes they don't get done. Also, the safety in, for our teachers and administration at the different sites as well. So there's that. Then also coordinating with parents. Many times you will have parents come to you in the grocery store with a problem. Well, if I counted all the times that had happened, but it needs to be followed through on.
Thank you. Mr. Castillo.
So as far as the two steps for me, I believe parent engagement definitely is one of the issues. I feel that for COVID, a lot of families just gave the kids back to the school and just didn't want to have anything to do with what was going on since they had to cover down while the school was shut down. I think we need to regain their trust. I think we need to get them more involved. That will create a slew of other resolves in the sense of having them partner with us, understand what they're going through, understand what we're going through at the school. The next would be for me is understanding what the behavior issues are at every campus. I feel that behavior is a huge issue and it affects multiple things, whether it's bus driving, whether it's bullying, whether it's fighting on campus, and what the consequences are for those students. I feel how we can support those school sites and their discipline matrix, I think, is kind of important because it will feed everything else. Students won't leave the school because of ADA money or leave the school because of behavior issues. And I feel that that will just create a ripple effect as far as supporting those school sites.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Heitschuh, your two priorities.
My first priority is parent engagement. It's something that I'm currently doing right now. I've been a parent leader through PTA and PTO across several school sites, the high school, Flamson, and Pat Butler, and Virginia Peterson currently. And so I have a lot of experience getting parents to come to the spaces that the kids are in and engaging with our school system in meaningful ways. My second and my why for running is special education. As the parent of a special needs child, I have really struggled with the special education system in our schools. And I really think that there is a path to empowering our parents who are struggling at home and struggling in school. And I really think that with proper parent connections and opening this process that is emotional for a lot of families can really ease some of the distrust in the system for our families. Thank you.
Mrs. Dauterman.
Thank you. My top two priorities would be academics and communications. I think it's really important that we put the focus on academics and ensure that our curriculum is being deployed consistently across all of our classrooms. And that means that instructional time is protected and equivalent in each of the different classrooms and each of the different campuses. My second priority of communications, this is an area where I've seen deficits for years, and it's somewhere that I really feel like we need to improve upon. There's things that we're going to need to do in the future, like approving another bond so that we can maintain our facilities, and we've sort of lost the trust a bit in the community. And I think that improving communications, communicating clearly and consistently about what is going on, how money is being spent, will really help to bring the community back on board with our public education in Paso Robles. Thank you.
Thank you. Your priorities, Mr. Ennie.
Well, my one priority is really reestablishing trust and confidence in the school system, and that's going to have to be done through a two-prong effort. One is restoring the sense of safety in the schools. When you have Disciplinary issues, if you look at the Healthy Kids Survey, you've got roughly 50% of the high school students that say they don't feel safe at school. You got about 30% that admit to using drugs on campus. You have to reestablish discipline. You got teachers leaving because you have so many students mouthing off to them. Second one is reestablishing academic excellence, or maybe establishing it, but it's going to have to be a phased approach. When you have a graduating class that's got a 94% graduation rate, but only 16% meet proficiency, it's something that's going to have to be phased in over years. But once you start taking those steps, it's going to become an attractive district again. People will want to come here.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Yeah, my first one would be communication and connection. We have to continue to do better at communicating with our community and with our families. In doing so, we get families and staff more connected, and that creates a higher level of accountability on all levels, from the family side of it to the educational side of it. And the more we do that, the more we have better buy-in. The second goal is enabling our district to thrive, rebuild, and grow even more. We've seen a drastic change in how much the district is doing and how much we are improving things, and we need to continue to enable our amazing staff to do the jobs that they're already doing. They've proven themselves. They have a track record of putting us on the right track and going forward with good plans, with a good vision, and we need to continue to enable them to do their jobs.
Mr. Reese, bring it home. Your top priorities.
My top priorities for the school board, the school district, are going to be fiscal responsibility and test scores. And the way we're going to achieve those things is setting goals for the district, for the staff, and making sure that those goals are met. So when it comes to budget issues, we're going to need to make sure that we're setting goals on spending and actually having a set budget that we're not going over. There's no magic money tree that we can just pull from. It's tax dollars. And I think that when it comes to government spending, a lot of times we think that there's just unlimited money, and there's not. So we have to make sure that we're setting goals, setting a budget, and making sure we're sticking to it. When it comes to test scores, like I said, same thing, setting a goal and sticking to it, making sure that our teachers are hitting those goals and we're not just kicking the can down the road, making sure that our students are meeting those goals, and making sure that we're really a district of excellence when it comes to our students and putting real good people into the community graduating from our high school.
Mr. Gerhardt, someone in the audience is curious. They want to know what experience qualifies or prepares you for the school board.
I've been here for a while. As a teacher in 36 years, I also did 3 years in Cal Poly, teaching at different areas. But I also went into counseling specifically on how to work with difficult kids. They used to call me the shepherd over at Lewis, in that I was willing to take on a lot of special ed kids, and we worked together. Not only that, but I've had a whole lot of experience with dealing with the community, and especially with the parents that I had their kids. And when a kid did well, I called home. How often have you had a teacher call home to praise your child? So
Mr. Castillo,
there it is.
your background.
Prior to my new job at Camp Roberts, I was a student affairs coordinator at Almond Acres for 3 years. I retired out of the Army after 22 years. I did a lot of stuff with the military. I worked with that youth at risk through a program called Counter Drug here in the Central Coast as well as in Southern California. I've worked with youth in regards to that. I've worked with youth in regards to the arts. I've seen the kids that are the bad kids and the kids that are the good kids. I've worked with the students that are struggling and the students that are not struggling. My time at Almond Acres opened my eyes to a lot of issues that are going on, not just here locally, but statewide, and also just what we're setting up our students for. I feel that I have the structure and the discipline and the routine and the gusto, if you will, to go out of my way to problem solve and resolve. I think that I'm a resourceful person. I feel like I'm a problem solver, and I think that that is what qualifies me.
Thank you. Mrs. Haichu, your qualifying experience.
I've said it a couple times. I have spent a lot of time working both for money and for not money in this district. I've served on site councils and I've participated in LCAP committees. I've been on several PTA boards. If there's an opportunity for me to engage with the school district, I will take it. And I think that that experience over 10 years has given me a really unique perspective when we're considering our budgets. I know what those implications look like. I know what that looks like when a decision is flowing through our school system. I know our kids know me. It's just a really special thing to spend time with our students, to spend time with our parents, to spend time with our teachers. And I really think that that uniquely qualifies me for this.
Thank you. Mrs. Dauterman.
Thank you. I think the experience that qualifies me or prepares me to be on the board is the fact that I'm a parent. During the pandemic, I homeschooled both of my kids for a year. And during that time, I became very familiar with the curriculum and how to use it, how to improve academic rigor. Both of my kids returned to school and they were on level. They didn't fall behind. I'm really happy they're back in school, by the way. It was very challenging having them both at home and trying to learn how to be a teacher at the same time as being a parent. I've been involved with the school site council for several years now. I know what's going on campus, and I also spent a lot of time last year increasing parental involvement through the PTA at Winifred Pfeiffer, and we even were awarded a School of Excellence from National PTA award for those efforts. I also have a business background in management consulting, and I think that that would really help with the budgetary constraints that we face.
Mr. Enney, your experience.
Well, I've got 25 years as a Marine Corps officer. I've commanded in combat over 1,000 people, so I know how to have the experience and the leadership to basically provide the oversight and direction. That's what we're supposed to be doing, not supposed to be necessarily telling people how to do their job. I've got experience, bringing people together. Last year, even though Mrs. Dauterman was partly responsible for recalling me last year, and I reached out and crossed the ideological divide to multiple opponents to try to mend fences, which apparently didn't work. But besides that, I've got the experience on the board now. I know where all the problems are, and I've helped develop a plan to move forward with Mrs. Loftus.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, it's hard to answer that within a minute, but some of my strongest assets are a parent of 4 kids, 3 of them currently in our district, ranging from 6th grade all the way up to the high school. One graduated and off to Fresno State right now. I'm a son of a former teacher. Trustee for almost 4 years. During that time, not only have I served as board president, but I also completed my master's in governance, which is a series of courses that you take to dive into deeper leadership and understanding of board roles and responsibilities. I've served on and successfully led several boards in various positions, board president, secretary, and others. And one of the other things that I'm strongly proud of is my involvement in the community, because that involvement in the community allows me to hear voices, allows me to hear conversations and continue conversations. And that is what I bring back, serving my constituents currently right now, and what I look forward to doing hopefully with 4 more years.
Thank you. Mr. Brees.
Like I said, I'm a recent graduate from Paso High. One thing I have on all the other candidates up here is I'm not old. So some of you might get a little upset with me, but you're all a lot older than I am, and And, I can really bring that new perspective. Paso High is not the same Paso High that it was 30 years ago. And I really understand that, and a lot of people in the community really understand that. So that's really the experience I'm bringing. I grew up doing 4-H since the time I was 8, 9 years old. So I understand how to budget a project and make sure that project makes it all the way through to the end. I've done a lot of different things. I'm involved in small businesses in the community. I understand that not every year is going to be a good year fiscally. I understand that we really need to scale back on a lot of things when it comes to spending. But the big thing is a new perspective for the school district as being such a young person.
Mrs. McCoy.
So as Tracy mentioned, I am a mom that taught their child during distance learning, and so I got to see firsthand what these teachers are going through, and I was very excited to send them back to school, but also knowing that the teachers need help. And I've been a classroom parent for over 10 years in the school, a family counselor and a mentor for over 25 years. And so I feel like that's what I bring to the table. I can listen very well. I can create an action plan and make sure that it's followed through thoroughly.
Mr. Castillo, new question. Since school trustees now represent areas within the school district, how does this affect trustees' responsibilities?
I feel that it affects us in a different way, and it's positive and it could be a little negative the way you look at it. It helps you understand basically your home of record, where you live, your community. That is your immediate community. District 6 is compiled of apartment complexes, lots of residential homes, a senior living community. There's also an industrial area, so it's multifaceted as far as residential goes. Understanding that community specifically is a perk. Understanding where you live is a perk, but also understanding the negative things that go on in that community in that specific part of town is also the downfall that we have to work on as far as individuals in our districts.
Thank you. Mrs. Heitschuh.
I really love that we are in areas. It gives us an opportunity to get to know our neighbors. I personally live a block away from the elementary school that's in our trustee area. I know my parents, I know the children, I know my neighbors, and like Leo said, it is incredibly diverse area. It is the smallest area. It's tightly packed in there, and there's just a wide dynamic of people living in this trustee area. And I really like how intimate this process is through it being a trustee area. But I think it's really important to note that once elected, you are representing the entirety of our school district. And I also think that that's really special because while my children, I have one at this elementary school, I also have children at the high school, and I had children at Flamson before that. And there's dynamics at play there that I really appreciate.
Mrs. Dodderman.
Thank you. I think that there's some really interesting things that come along with the trustee areas representing so my trustee area is very large geographically. It's mainly rural, and learning what is important to the people that live in those different locations, I think is really important for the trustees to know so that you understand the issues that those families face. So one thing that faces my trustee area in particular is transportation, just because the area is so large and it does extend all the way out into San Miguel, which is the reason why I feel like bus transportation is so important for our constituents there. I think that it allows for building a sense of community, and it gives you just a better idea of what the trustee area needs. But as Adelita said, once you're elected, you represent the entire district as a whole. So that's more important to keep in mind as well. Thank you.
Mr. Rennie, your thoughts on the new organization?
Well, I'm not a big fan of it, but it is what it is. My biggest concern, I think, with the going to the areas is it's going to, naturally, what's going to happen, I think trustees are going to become locked into their own little area. And I really liked during the last year and a half that I answered questions and addressed issues at lots of different schools all around the community. And I think a lot of people reached out to me because they figured they'd get results, which 95% of the time they did. My biggest concern is I don't want the trustees to become focused solely on their own areas. And I think that's naturally a risk that's going to occur when we have a model like this.
Mr. Williams, please.
Yeah, I see it differently. I see the role of the trustee doesn't change. The role of the trustee is to still serve the entire community. There's not, the districts in themselves, they allow, in my opinion, they allow areas to get to know those that are more closely confined to your neighbors. So for example, I've been living in my neighborhood for 15 years, since I moved back. My neighbors know me. My neighbors know who I am. And it allows them to say, okay, this is who's going to be my voice. So that way I know who I'm voting for as opposed to at large, which could be anybody, or it could be clumped up together. So to me, my role as a trustee doesn't change just because I'm from a certain district, but it allows my neighbors to know who I am and to vote for me because of who I represent.
The young Mr. Brees.
Thank you. Having these trustee areas, it is unique because, like others said, we have that unique ability to really connect with our neighbors and the people in our community, our small community of our areas, and really figure out what their needs are and what's going on. Our area, Creston Road, runs right through. I get questions all the time about traffic. We have 3 schools on that one road, and traffic is a huge issue for people going to and from school, especially with a big switch on the schools that switch sides of towns just recently. But it really does give us a unique ability to connect with our neighbors and our community. But like Mr. Ennie said, there is that unique ability to alienate that other areas, and a trustee could focus solely on their area and not look at other areas the way they should and represent the district the way they should. So.
Mrs. McCoy, your thoughts?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. Since the school trustees now represent areas within the school district, how does this affect trustees' responsibilities?
So I do believe that the responsibilities don't change. I feel like it still gives us the opportunity to build relationships. It gives us the option of seeing the need and meeting the need, as well as plowing the field in our area. It does create a little bit of division at some point because, as a few people have mentioned, you stick to one area and you don't necessarily focus on them all. But also as a board member, we do have the opportunity to be at other schools that are not in our district so that we can see what's going on and be able to help those in that area as well.
Waiting for the go.
Thank you. Mr. Gearhart.
All right. Let's look at the reason why we went into districts like that. The reason of that was because historically, we have not allowed, it's going to be hard to say, our minority people didn't have a chance against a whole community voting. Because of that, they broke it in, and we didn't do it because we wanted to. We got sued if we didn't. And so that's why we're in groups. That does not mean we're only for that area. I'm dealing with a safety concern right now. But that doesn't mean I'm not handling other things in other areas.
Mrs. Haichu, what are some of the strengths you see in the district, and conversely, what are some of the areas of need?
One of my favorite things about the Paso Robles School District is the community that we have built for ourselves as this overarching umbrella of we are Bearcats. I think it's really unique and special, and our community will always rally together when it really comes down to it. Our staff is phenomenal. My children are excelling in their schools because of the staff that has helped build my children into the people that they are, and I am forever grateful for that. There is a need to build back trust in our school systems. I think that we have had a rough road for several years, and I see us on that path. But open and honest communication with our families and our staff will help. That stop sign gets me. It will get us there eventually. I just think that we need the right people leading us to get to that end goal. Thank you.
Mrs. Dodderman.
Thank you. I think some of the strengths that we have in our school district are our teachers, our programming. We have excellent CTE programs at the high school and a lot of opportunities for students to get involved in different things that they enjoy. The clubs, I think, are another strength. I'm really impressed by our new superintendent, Jennifer Loftus. I think she's come in just running, and she's grabbed a lot of low-hanging fruit already, and I'm really excited to see her do more. Areas of need, I think that we need more parents to be involved in the education of their children. I think that it's really important for kids to be at school and for families to value education. We have a problem with chronic absenteeism, and that's something that really needs to be addressed if we're going to improve our academic performance amongst our students. The last thing that I'm going to say for the area of need is that I think it's really important for the community to place an importance on the public school system, and that's something where we can definitely improve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ennie.
Well, I think the biggest strength is the community itself. We've got great families, we've got great teachers, we've got great students, but we don't really, well, at least until Mrs. Loftus arrived, we really haven't had strong leadership at the top, either at the superintendent level or really at the board level. And the steps that have to be made, the corrections that have to be made is probably first and foremost, you need a superintendent and a board that's going to be transparent. They're going to admit their problems, budget deficits, lawsuits, failing grades, drugs, violence. Those are, once you address the issue, to paraphrase Zig Ziglar, once you admit you have a problem, you can fix it. But you have to admit you have a problem and can't be embarrassed by it.
Mr. Williams, the strengths and the areas of need, please.
I think we have a lot to be proud of. While we have a lot of work to still do, we've come a long way, and that's in large part because of our staff, because of the direction that we've been able to turn things into. And that's exciting for me. That's to watch our staff be able to take on the missteps of the past, own them, and say, this is how we're going to fix it, and this is what we're doing moving forward. That takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of strength and a lot of tenacity to do that. Some of the things we need to do is we need to continue that. We cannot let our foot off the gas right now. We cannot let our foot off when we are actually have momentum happening. We have things happening right now. We have accountability that's there. We have decision-making that's happening. I am proud to have helped lead the board to the hiring of Superintendent Loftus. She has done an amazing job stepping in, and we all have worked so hard for the last 2 years during my time as president to change the way that the board behaves, the way that the board acts and gets things done. And that's something that I look forward to watching continue to grow.
Thank you, Mr. Brees.
A lot of the other candidates already said it. It's the community. It's the sense of the community. The fact that we can come in here and sit all together. I can sit in between two older Bearcats and they didn't whop me in the head when I called them old. The fact the fact that we just have that mutual respect with the community, and we can all get together, and we all know that we're all Paso Roblans at the end of the day. The other day we just had the Pioneer Day parade. We all came together as a community and enjoyed that together. Area of need, though, I would say a big thing is student discipline and student safety. I think those two kind of go together hand in hand. Making sure that our students really are safe on campus, regardless of what community they're a part of. Making sure that they're getting the education they really deserve, and making sure that when a student comes to school, they're safe, they're getting their education, and they don't feel that they're having to get stones thrown at them to get an education. But student discipline, student safety is a huge thing for me.
Mrs. McCoy, strengths and needs, please.
So I feel like Paso Robles as a whole, they come together in the time of need and crisis, and they do that really well. I wish that it was something that we could do all of the time, but that's a need. And sports obviously is a big strength, and everybody comes together again for sports. Jennifer Loftus, Superintendent Jennifer Loftus, has been a huge strength, and I feel like moving forward, we're in the right direction when it comes to having her as part of the Bearcat team. Our needs, we really need to get students to a place where they'll be able to be equipped with all of the tools that they're going to need for success. And when I mention that, I'm talking about our math scores, reading, and things like that, because that's a huge need. And if we don't focus on that, then our students are not going to be set up for success like we say in our mission statement and our core values. And so I feel like that is the biggest need as of right now, because we're graduating students without being able to do math and read, and then parental
Thank you.
involvement.
Mr. Gearhart.
Yeah. Strengths. All right, we do have a great community. In fact, just at this last fair, we ended up having an auction for our folks spent, our community members, over $300,000 that went to the kids for their projects. Also, buying livestock historically has been very well supported. And so, yeah, we have that part. Also, a strength that we have is the wide ability of our teaching staff.
Mr. Castillo, final thoughts on our strengths and areas of need.
So, everyone says community, and I don't discard that at all. I mean it 100%. I lost my son, and this community came out and supported my family. And I mean every person in this community. Most of you that are here were at his memorial service, and I appreciate that. Staff from the elementary school were at his service. I appreciate that. This town comes together as a community in tragic situations, and I appreciate that. That is a strength that you do not find in a lot of places, and I've lived in a lot of places. Needs, I will say engagement and involvement with families, and I mean that not just because we've been saying it all night, but also because it needs to become attainable. We as a district need to make it attainable for those families to want to get involved, to want to participate in a board meeting, to want to come to site council. We need to make it attainable. We are not making it attainable right now. And lastly, with that, I want to say that behavior is a major part of that because like Mr. Bree said, discipline, but behavior is the factor. It's not just discipline and consequence, but it's behavior. What is the behavior there? And that's all I got. Stop sign.
You may have mentioned them throughout the evening, but it's time to put a spotlight. Question: what is the most important problem the school district has? Mrs. Dauterman.
Thanks, Kitty. The most important problem that the school district has, that's really hard for me to narrow that down to one thing, but I think I'm going to come back to behaviors. There are a lot of behaviors that are happening in our schools and not necessarily the appropriate resources to deal with those behaviors appropriately, and that takes our administrators away from doing what's really important, and that is being focused on academic instruction and ensuring that our classroom teachers are able to provide the level of instruction that all of our students need to achieve positive results. Thank you.
Mr. Inney.
Well, I'm going to go with discipline and safety. When I look at this school district, I think all of our other problems sort of fall from the lack of discipline. I had the opportunity to sit down with PRPE back in March, and there were probably about 50 teachers there, and we spent 2 hours as they discussed how they didn't feel supported by the district in terms of enforcing discipline. You had teachers that told stories of students giving them the middle finger and walking out of class. You had stories of teachers who had students with over 300 tardies, which I didn't think was possible since we only have 180 school days. But the fact remains that we have failed as leaders in this, at this dais and on the superintendent staff to enforce discipline and support those teachers. Once that happens, the academics falls into place, everything else should start falling into place.
Mr. Williams, what do you think the most important problem in this school district is?
I don't know that I could label one problem as the most important problem, and that's difficult to sit up here and say, because as a school district or a trustee, you want to be able to proudly say that we have all these successes, but we also have a lot of things that we're working on, a lot of things that we need to be honest with and real with and continue to put on the forefront and change. I don't know that we have just one that stands out. So while I can list a few that would stand out, I can't list just one. We have several that we need to continue to address, whether that be our fiscal solvency, whether that be our discipline issue, as others have stated, whether it be facilities and maintenance. It could be, there's so many that we legitimately need to continue to put on the forefront and not allow to be discarded or even dismissed. So for one, I can't put one out there.
Mr. Brees.
I think that the top priority for the school district in this next year is going to have to be fiscal responsibility. If the school district was a business, this business would be it would be bankrupt, it would be done. We just started this last fiscal year with a 4.9% deficit, budget deficit. We were in the red. Usually when you're running a business, you want to start your budget in the green. But that's just not how we've been running things here at the district. And I think that's going to be a huge thing, because once we start spending money correctly, we can start making sure that students are getting what they need, getting the education they need, making sure that facilities are being taken care of, making sure that staff is being taken care of. So the biggest thing is going to be making sure that spending is in line and making sure that our budget is balanced so we can keep going and keep running this business the way the business needs to be run.
Mrs. McCoy, what do you think the district's biggest problem is?
Discipline's already been mentioned, but also in that discipline, creating a safe place for teachers to teach and supporting them through that, because that just don't feel like they're being disrespected, and it's hard to teach a child how to behave in class when you've got 30 of them and you're trying to teach a lesson, which that involves the parents being on board as well and teaching their children how to behave. Attendance is definitely one of those as well. Making school a place where kids want to come and want to learn and not leave.
Mr. Gerhard, your take on this question?
Thank you. Actually, these two people kind of summed up what I was going to say. So what apparently we're facing is a cut in our state funding. We get state funding and then some money coming in from the federals groups, not much, and like that. Now, in 2008 through 10, the California government decided to put us kind of like on loan. In other words, we loaned them 3 months of our money, and then they would pay it back eventually. That's not a way of being able to run a business. And also in a business, you're guaranteed a raw material. Schools don't.
Mr. Castillo, your take on this question, please.
So I'm going to go back to behaviors and discipline only because it is a ripple effect. If students aren't acting right at school and not behaving, not being kind, it's going to create a ripple effect. Parents will pull their students, they will homeschool those students, staff retention will be minimized or staff retention will happen because they're not being treated appropriately. And parents lose trust in the district because we're not handling ourselves appropriately as far as discipline and consequences. And it also could be, this is something that I feel is something that can be mitigated and accomplished. I do feel that it's something that it's not difficult to attain. And we're also not setting them up for success because if they're gonna act that way in high school, they're not gonna act right when they go out into the civilian sector and do their jobs.
Mrs. Haichu.
I think that this overarching issue here is consistency throughout our schools. In regards to discipline, in regards to academics, I think that our elementary schools kind of function as little satellites, and then we feed them all collectively into our now junior high, which was once two separate middle schools, and then those kids funnel into high school. And all of those kids are coming from different places, different ways of doing things, and different tolerances from different staffs at different sites. We really need to establish a consistent message across all of our elementary schools with, of course, nuance to population differences. But I think if we get a consistent elementary school message out, then our kids won't be shell-shocked when they hit our junior high, and they'll be ready when they hit that high school level. I really think that a consistent plan for how we discipline our elementary school children, how we teach our elementary school children, will yield a stronger school system.
Well, this is a timely question. Safety and discipline has been mentioned more than once tonight. What strategies, Mr. Inney, or ideas do you have with regards to this?
Well, I have some experience with that, having been in the Marine Corps. I think first and foremost, starting down at in the middle school area, in the middle school or / junior high now, first and foremost, the kids have to be held accountable, and they aren't. There's been sort of an unwritten rule that I'm hearing from teachers that you don't want to punish kids unnecessarily. So I'm not necessarily a fan of suspension, but I would love to see Saturday detentions. I've seen in many cases, we have kids in the high schools that are committing felony equivalents, but nothing's happened to them. I would like to see more law enforcement involvement, set up a court similar to what Dan Dow has set up with the veterans or drug courts, where you have diversion programs where they, again, have to spend their Saturdays doing something. Not on their permanent record, but start teaching them that there are consequences for their actions.
Thank you, Mr. Inney. Mr. William, your ideas.
Thank you. I think that we need to, much like Adelita was saying, we need to do a better job of consistency and clarity because we what is disciplined at one site is not necessarily being carried over or done with the same consistency at another site. And without that expectation, we set them up for failure. We set them up to have differences of expectations. We set them up to do different things. We need to do a better job of bringing to light what our expectations are, what our standards are, and how we're going to enforce them. And in doing so, we start from the bottom and it goes up. Therefore, and as kids progress along the way, they know what's in place, they know why it's in place, and they know what's going to happen accordingly. That gives them the security, it gives them the accountability, and it gives us as parents and community members the relief and the trust that things are happening for certain reasons and specific reasons. So that clarity and consistency is something that we have to do better with.
Mr. Brees.
I think the biggest thing, and Mr. Ennie said it already, but it's going to be the big C word, consequences. These students are going to have consequences for their actions. Far too often we see a student do something and it's an offense that's really bad. Maybe they should be kicked out of school. Maybe they should be gone for a week. Maybe they should have detention for a week, whatever it may be. But all too often we see that student the next day right back in the same place they were at before and doing the same exact thing, and the teacher can't do anything about it. So making sure that there's consequences, and also making sure that the staff and the board are backing up teachers to make sure that they can discipline students, and making sure that staff can discipline the students the way they need to be disciplined. Because that's going to be the big thing, is just making sure that there's real discipline and making sure that these students are having consequences for poor actions that they're making. Because these students are, a lot of the things that are happening in the high school, and they're going to go and graduate, and they're going to be committing real offenses in the real world, and they're going to have to handle real consequences.
Mrs. McCoy.
So when I say this, I believe that there should be consequences to the actions that the students are, to the things that they're doing. I also feel that when you have a Saturday school, if the parents have to go, they're going to be very upset because they have to participate in a Saturday school and discipline with their children, and therefore they would most likely be more involved in helping them not be in the situation that they're in. With that being said, also, sometimes the actions that the students are taking are deeply rooted in something else. And so knowing what the cause of those actions are is very important as well, and how the discipline and consequences will take place.
Thank you. Mr. Gearhart, your strategies.
Okay, first off, before we go on, I want to say you have to remember you have 3 different types of schools we're dealing with. Elementary, the junior high, and the high school. You can't accept one plan for all of them. Also, within those 3 groups, you have lower socioeconomic people that have specific needs. There's a program for them, and it exists now. In the middle school, we had a similar safety net thing. So if there is a problem, it's just not kicked down the road. It goes ahead and gets the counseling and everything before they can go on. So there are plans that exist.
Thank you.
It's just following through with them.
Mr. Castillo, please.
During my time at Almond Acres, I was the manager of discipline and issuing out consequences. And suspension does not work. It's a kid that goes home, is on a device, mom and dad have to take time off of work. It's not something that's going to solve a problem. Now, again, case-by-case basis, if it's something that's violent and physical, then absolutely. However, what I did while I was there, I created a discipline matrix that included community service. I partnered with the First Fruits Farm in San Luis Obispo, the San Miguel Mission, the VFW, and the Echo Shelter. If a student committed an infraction, mind you, this is a K-8 school, every infraction was handled based on community service according to their age, so it was age appropriate. If they had to go to an infraction, go feed the homeless, they would go with their parent. It was on their family time, their Saturdays, their Sundays, not during school time, not to take them away from academic time. It was on the weekend. It showed them a positive outlook on doing something for someone else for an hour of their weekend. And they would come back to school after they completed their volunteer community service. So I feel like that's something that we could do across the board, whether it's a K-8 or high school.
Thank you. Mrs. Heitschuh, your thoughts?
I just want to reiterate, like I said earlier, that we need clear and concise expectations and consequences for our students. But aside from that, this is something that we start building in elementary school. We have a system in place at our schools called PBIS. Through that process, we build pride in our young children in their schools that they don't want to misbehave. When I was a paraeducator, we were catching kids doing good. We weren't following our children around telling them when they were doing something wrong. We were like, I love how you're using walking feet. And that can be implemented through all of our grades age appropriately. When we teach our children young to love behaving, they'll take that through to that next step, and they'll have that pride in their elementary school, they'll have that pride at their junior high, and they'll have pride in high school. And I think that we can really shape children through that.
Mrs. Dotterman, you get the final words on this question.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of piggyback a little bit on what Adelita said. PBIS, I think those are really great in elementary school, reinforcing positive behaviors and starting young. We already have a multi-tiered system of supports within our schools. We have tier 1, those are universal. That's the emphasis on positive behaviors. It starts in elementary. We have tier 2, that's targeted supports. That's impacts about 15% of our students. That might include something like small group counseling. Tier 3 would be intensive supports, and that is usually used for about 5% of our students, and that might include individual counseling. We have citations in place that we're working at the high school last year to reduce second offenses. It was used as a suspension alternative, for example, for fighting or students that were in possession of a controlled substance, and it required a student and parent to show up in court. And I think that that level of commitment from the parent that was needed really did help to stem those second offenses. Thank you.
According to the protocol agreed to at the beginning of the meeting, the last person to give their opening statement will be the first to give their closing statement of 90 seconds. Mr. Inney.
Well, I want to end up where I started, and that's the district's at a crossroads right now. We got a lot of challenges ahead of us. We've got a very, very talented superintendent that's come in, but again, I want to sum up what those challenges are. We're starting the fiscal year with a $4.9 million deficit. We have declining enrollment. Our graduating class of 2025, although it's got probably it'll have a 94% graduation rate, only 16% will be proficient in math, and 45% will be proficient in English. Those are the biggest concerns I have. I had to do this last year. I had to campaign last year because you had some people that wanted to silence my voice that forced a recall. Cost the district about $350,000. I've spent the last year and a half reaching across the divide trying to work with them. And in spite of that, they're never going to be happy, in spite of the fact that I was the one that saved Winifred Pfeiffer. I fought my own people, and I fought the progressives on the board to do that. I was the one that helped fix the transportation. When I showed up, we had about 200 students riding. Now we have about 700. I was the one that got things done. I was the one that put my politics aside, not the progressives, not my opponent. I may ruffle feathers, but I get results. I'm not a cheerleader, but I look out for everybody, and I'm guided by my faith in the U.S. Constitution.
Mr. Williams, please, your closing statement.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for being here and those that will watch this video. I'd also like to thank those that given me the opportunity to serve and represent their voices. I've proudly done so and humbly done so. My goal has always been to find ways to build bridges and to find those divides and find ways to bridge those gaps. We, as a board, represent the community at large, and when you watch our board, it is very split, but it's also reflective of the community at large. Our community is very split, and I commend us. I commend us for being able to find ways to be civil when we have disagreements. I commend us for finding ways to work through problems, not hide from problems. I'm proud of the progress that we've made, knowing that we have a long ways to go. We are not where we want to be, but we are starting to head in the right direction, and we have the opportunity to do that more now than ever. There were missteps that were done in the past, and nobody hides from that. Everybody recognizes that, and everybody should recognize that. Everybody should be willing to state as such. With that being said, though, we also need to recognize the amazing staff that we have, the amazing administrators, the amazing educators, and the potential of what we can do with so much right in front of us. Our ag department over here they rank 5th in the state. We have kids that are being published. We have teachers that are doing things that are, our Crimson Chronicle is, the Crimson is actually one of 41 in the nation. So we have a lot to be proud of.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Brees, your closing comments.
I think I'm going to start off by saying that there's a lot to be done. I think there's a lot that we can do as a district, and I'll tell you right now that I'm not going to be the status quo candidate. I'm not the status quo candidate up here. I plan on, if I'm elected, getting things done and not going along to get along. I plan on, if I need to, ruffling some feathers, as the saying goes. But I'm not status quo. I understand that I don't work for anybody on the district staff. I don't work for anybody in this office. I work for you. I work for the people. I work for my constituents of my trustee area. And that's what I plan on doing. I plan on representing them and coming in and doing what I need to do to make sure that we build our schools up to the true district of excellence, and make sure that we're graduating students that go out and they're good citizens of the community, whether they stay here. I hope they do stay here in Paso and help promote the community. But even if they go out and go to another community, I hope that people can see them and talk to them and say, wow, that Paso Robles community, those are good people. That's a good place. That's really my plan, and if I'm elected, that's what I plan on doing is making sure that we're the true district of excellence.
Thank you. Mrs. McCoy.
So I say it all the time when I sit up here during our board meetings, but if we don't start in elementary school training and teaching our children how to be excellent, the chances of them excelling throughout the rest of their school career is slim to none. And we have to set those boundaries. We have to have consistency, as a lot of people have mentioned up here. And we have to be able to support, as parents, as grandparents, as community members, we have to be able to encourage and support them through all of those challenges during elementary school, so that when they do get to where they need to be, they can graduate knowing that they know how to do multiplication, they know how to do algebra, they know how to read, they know how to write in cursive and print. Like, we have to make sure that we're doing all of those things at an early age. And so that is where I feel my strong suit is that I want to encourage those people, those parents and the teachers, to make sure that they're have the tools that they need, that we're picking the right curriculum, that parents are asking questions about the curriculum, and that parents are also learning how to do the things that their children are doing so that they can help them at home, because it's not a one-sided thing where the school and the teachers are not here to raise your children. You're here to raise your children, and you have to do yourself a due diligence by understanding and being able to help them, whether that's you helping them or getting them a tutor.
Mr. Gearhart, please.
Well, you've heard a lot tonight. I want to add a few things. I really am concerned about the state cutting back funding. And the reason is not just the obvious, but where are we going to have to cut? We have 82% of our income going to human beings, teachers, staff, the whole thing, we're going to have to cut. And so we are working with some bad shortage right now. I don't remember that bad before. But the bottom line is we can overcome, and we better do it. Behavior. Have you ever asked a kid, why? Why did you decide to do that when you knew you were going to get in trouble for it? The best answer I've ever heard from a kid was, yeah. They need attention. It's how to get it that is important. And they're not being taught at home. We need to work on that.
Mr. Castillo.
This is not a role that many people want to run for or even do. So I'd like to commend everyone up here for volunteering and putting their time out there and putting themselves out there. People will judge and criticize every single one of us however they choose to. But at the end of the day, it is us that is up here today trying to make a difference in our own private ways. We're not just helping raise students to be the best that can be as far as academics and behavior. We're raising future citizens of our society. And that's not just locally here in Paso, that's around the country. I want to know that the students that are going to grow up and take care of me when I'm in an elderly home are the right people to take care of me in an elderly home. I want to make sure that that student that graduates becomes a cop. I want that cop to be the best cop that they can be, the best fireman they can be, the best teacher they can be. I feel like that's what we need to be focusing on. I feel that my heart is in the right place, as many of my constituents up here. I feel that if elected at this role, I'm passionate about solving problems, and I feel that this community can, if you all have our support or give us your support, I feel that we can make this happen. I feel it is attainable. That yellow card just really throws me off, I'm sorry. This community, this village, I feel like we can do it, and I feel that we can only do that with your guys' support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Haichu.
I heard this at the city council forum, and I'm going to use it. Tonight, we have talked about a lot of topics, but we haven't talked about why you should vote for me. So smooth. I have proven myself to be a community leader. I've done the work. I've been in the classrooms. I've volunteered in all of the spaces. I've listened to the budgets. I've given input about our most vulnerable community. I'm raising a member of our most vulnerable community. I've worked with our teachers. I've worked with our paraeducators. I've walked kids through that lunch line. I've met our staff on several sites. I've volunteered at several sites, and I've given input consistently for 10 years. We need candidates and school board members who have given that commitment already, who have shown themselves to be there doing this work. It's not easy work. And I commend everyone who's already elected to the board. Leo's right. It isn't something that people are knocking each other down to come and do. But it's important to have leaders who are already leading. And I think that I'm that person. So thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Dauterman, you get the final words.
Thank you. I think it's really important that our school board members set a positive example and be role models for our students and our community as a whole. It's been an absolute honor to run in this race. I was asked by about 30 people in our community, if not more, to consider running, and the first 10 or 15 I told no, absolutely not. And then I thought about it some more, and after more and more people really encouraged me to do it, I decided I would take it on. I think that it's important for the school board to be made up of people who are parents and have a vested interest in our school system. I think it's important to work together as a team. I am a team builder. I am someone who's very approachable. You're all welcome to reach out to me at any time. I'm pretty easy to find. And I think that it's so important that we have this community that is supportive of our public schools. If we don't have that, then we will begin to see our public school system erode. And I think that those steps have already, it's already started. If you want to have a positive and continually improving public education system, you need to have people who are really vested in making it that. And I am. I have 2 kids in the district. They're in elementary school right now. I'm going to be around for a long time. So I hope that you will look into my platform if you aren't familiar with it already and consider placing your vote for me. Thank you.
Some final thanks for this evening. We cannot forget the IT staff who are working overtime tonight. They are providing a live stream to those who were not able to attend, and you can see yourself on camera because it will be on the district website, correct? Yes. And also, a note of appreciation to the rest of the league volunteers who donated their valuable time. Another well-earned thank you to the participants tonight for being ideal candidates who are committed to limiting their comments to the issues and respecting each other and the audience. And a final thank you to the real stars, the audience, for questions that are reflective of engaged and informed voters. We hope we haven't kept the older people past your bedtime tonight. Mr. Brees was worried about you.
I'll be fine, don't worry.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Buenas noches.